Welcome back to Horses of Courses. I'm Tinia.
I'm Suzanna.
And for your August episode, we have all sorts of topics. Last but not least will end up being the ATFO results, and we'll give you our play-by-plays on that. But up first, we're going to have Suzanna picked this topic. She knows a lot more about it than I do. Aural plaques.
Aural plaques. That's a weird one, isn't it?
Well, and honestly, this is telling on myself. I heard it said a lot more than I ever read about it. So it always sounded to me like people were saying oral, O-R-A-L.
Oh.
And so when I went to look up this, I'm not kidding, like 10 years ago, aural plaques, I was like, oh, it's not oral. And I thought all the time, why is it in their ear? But the way I rationalized it is because you can have teeth in the ears. And somehow, but that's a whole nother thing. So that's more, that Susanna has a lot more to say on that. So first, my question to you is, if you're hearing this, have you heard of it?
That goes right along with oral, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's A-U-R.
We're orally telling you about aural plaques.
Yeah, so a lot of people, what is it that they usually call it? So, people have another name for
Earwigs.
it. No, they have some kind of layman's name for it. I don't even know. But it's the white scaly stuff that grows in your horse's ear that makes your horse really head shy. And it comes from being bitten by a fly. They deposit whatever that is in the ear, and the reaction to it causes those white scales, and they're really very painful.
But am I thinking of something wrong? There's a horse papilloma virus component.
And the flies are who transmit
right,
that.
Okay.
So, yeah, papilloma. I think it's papilloma, isn't it?
I mean, it's got an L. I guess a papillon has L's too.
I bet
so
it's, I bet it's papilloma, but I guess we'll look that one up later. Whatever, anyway. So, and they're very painful, so the horse will flat out break your nose if you try to manipulate an ear that's very painful with those. So, recently they're developing new things for those. I mean, it used to be that you scraped it off and then you put this horribly painful stuff on it every day, and the horse about broke your nose every day trying to put this horribly painful stuff on it, and it went away about 40% of the time. But it's such an onerous thing to treat it with that most of the time the veterinarians are just like, leave it alone. Now, I was reading not too long ago that they have developed some new stuff that seems to be really promising and not nearly as painful. So maybe that's going to be a thing that you can actually get rid of them. But in the past, what I have told people to do, and I worked at a public riding stables and had a horse with aural plaques, is get a bridle that you can disassemble and just flop it behind their ear, because folding their ear in there, you're just going to die, or the horse is going to run from you.
Well, and I think it's important. That was a concern I had when going into the Appalachian Trainer Face Off. We had a horse turned into us named Bastion that we had a little bit of a history with, not as a hop horse, but we knew of this horse and why he was rounded up when he was feral. And he was so worried about his head. I did almost wonder, is this why? And ultimately it was not in his case, because you can't necessarily, if they're so protective of the head, you really need to have them sedated to be able to even tell.
Right.
So you may have, if you have a horse that you're dealing with extreme head shyness, and maybe they weren't, especially if they weren't always that way, but maybe they came to that way, it's worth exploring, probably under sedation with your veterinarian. Are you dealing with aural plaques, rather than assuming it's a behavioral thing and trying to force them to tolerate pain?
Which is what happened at my stables. People didn't realize that before I came, didn't realize that was her problem. And they tried all kinds of things to make her behave herself while they bridled her. And it was a mess.
Yeah, and just keep in mind, you can't always see it. I'm taller than most women, and I have seen it in some, but I have been made aware of it in
Lorena
horses.
Had it. Remember Lorena
Yes.
had them?
And what did she end up doing when she was
buying
adopted?
her a bridle that would disassemble.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think the big part of that is really, if you have a head shy horse, explore whether that's what you're dealing with, whether you choose to then work around it, because it's my understanding really they're not particularly harmful if left alone.
Yeah.
Even over the long term. So
they can be unsightly. I mean, some of them get really darn big. The thing that you want to do if you do have that going on is to have a horse wear a fly mask with ears in it, which sometimes can also be an adventure. But the more you let the flies get to that, the more it'll grow and grow and grow. Because for some reason, flies are attracted to certain horses.
But then that challenge, getting that that fly mask on a horse that's worried about their ears.
They do put one on Lorena, though.
Yeah. So that's kind of our tip on something we've run into that maybe you haven't yet, but hopefully now that you've heard this, if you have, you'll think about it. And if you have a horse, you're thinking, oh, right now I have a hard time with their head, check into that. And if you find out that, hey, that's what it was, let us know. We like that kind of feedback.
You left him hanging, though. What was wrong with Bastion?
The trainer really had to work through it. His pole was out. He had to have chiropractic work. And
his pole was really out.
And so his trainer, who was in the Appalachian Trainer Face Off, Amy Parsley, did a beautiful job in a really quick amount of time because he was a replacement horse right before the event. And, this horse would almost flip over. But so I really did wonder about that. But that was not the case in his instance. And he really let go a lot of that anxiety. Somebody had just been unkind to him. Moving on, our product of the month, and we've used this a ton, is Wonder Dust.
Wonder Dust.
Dun, da, da, da.
Dun, da, da, da. Once upon a time, I wondered what was in Wonder Dust.
What is in Wonder Dust? I have guesses, but I don't know that I've read.
Well, there's lime in it for one thing, but there's also bluestone, which crushed bluestone, it's probably what gives it its color, really, is the crushed bluestone. But crushed bluestone was something that Native Americans used to use for wound care, so that's kind of interesting.
I bet there's some clay components, too, but I don't want to say that. Pop on there on Google and look that up. Well, I'm telling you, I actually used Wonder Dust earlier today.
Did you?
I did, right before I came. It's actually, look, on my thumb. I was wrapping...
crushed bluestone.
Yeah. I was wrapping Sela's leg, and I usually use Wonder Dust. Obviously, I think it helps in the wound healing process. I don't use it once the wound isn't wet. Once it starts to kind of scab and stuff, I stop using it myself. But when it's really open, not the first day or two either. I don't really use it the first or second time on a fresh wound. But by about day 3, it's something I would start using on a wound that's still really got a lot of kind of oozing.
Well, it won't stick if it's not. But I have had people wet a wound and put it on there before. But if it's not wet, it won't stick. At the practical side of it, it's so easy to put on a horse. And sometimes I'm dealing with horses that are, they're not wanting you to rub stuff all over that wound. I do like the ability to be able to just poof it up in there and squirt it at a distance, and I have not very dramatic reactions as a rule. The baby today, she's 2 years old. She was at first startled. This was the 3rd time using it on her wound. Flowers of sulfur. And activated charcoal, so if we poisoned ourselves, we could swallow some, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not telling anyone to do that.
Iodoform. I have no idea what that is.
But no clay.
No clay. Copper, potassium, alum, crushed bluestone, and lime.
Well, so, but Suzanna has used it as much as I have, and I'm a pretty big fan.
Yeah, I'm a pretty big fan. I had a kid who was going to Worlds in Texas, and his horse stepped on a pipe and just totally cut the crap out of his ankle on this pipe, and he came to me crying, and he was like, I've got to go to Worlds, and there's only 9 days, and that's what we used on it, and he went to Worlds and won in his age group, so it's just fantastic.
I like it. I do. I like it for drying. In my opinion, at least, it feels like it helps dry out the wound. And some people really like it for proud flesh. I don't think it exclusively is my go-to, but I use it in conjunction. Today on this wound, I used Wonder Dust, covered the wound, and then I used Proud's Off on the bandage that I put over it. So that's what I tend to do on most wounds. So it's very cheap. It's very accessible. I've used it. We use it on a lot of wounds that don't need wrapped. I think it's a wonderful product, and really, I think stays on and really gets in there and over the wound better than anything. If you think you're putting something on a moist, I'm sorry I said that. Made my own self gag.
Band-Aid.
God. A damp wound, and you're rubbing more like some kind of moisturizing stuff. It just slides right off. So I think Wonder Dust, if it's something you can't wrap, we use it a ton.
It's what we used on Prim. when she tried to jump the fence.
Right. So I really like the product. Hopefully you don't run into wounds like we do, but even small things, I think it works well.
Buddy, a rescue and a public riding stables will give you a lot of experience in wound care.
Suzanna has a bug in her tea. I want to draw attention to that. It's flying around in there. So.
Oh, that's terrible. Get out. Okay,
so we want to talk to you about our adoptable horse of the month.
He's so nice.
He is nice. And so his name is Tabasco. He's a chestnut, gatey fella. He kind of looks together the way Stephanie Davis calls it, by committee.
He's got some Belgian in him, some walking horse in him.
Some standard bred, some saddle bred maybe.
Yeah.
But he's kind of a handsome guy. And you can see...
He doesn't live up to his name. He's not fiery.
He's really not. He isn't for everyone. So, here's the thing about him. He's a companion horse. We have tried to get him under saddle. And we, if the right trainer had an opportunity to give him quite a bit of time, I still think that door could be, it isn't closed to riding, but we're kind of at where we're saying I think his best life maybe as a companion. He's a very easy keeper. He's not a kind of horse you could put out on, beautiful grass and just free choice allow him to exist. He is fine for the farrier if you're a capable horse person. I mean, he's, as long as you're calm and confident, he's confident and he trusts people that show him a lot of confidence. And I wouldn't call him a highly reactive fellow either. He's somewhere, if you were going to give him a score between 1 and 10 on how hot a horse, and he's probably a 5. But I think he's a cool guy. He's not best in a herd with mares and geldings. He can be with just geldings. He can be with just mares. He's not, he came into the rescue as he was a feral mine horse, and we accepted 8 feral colts, and he was one of them. I believe he was probably 3 to 4 years old at the time, so he wasn't castrated until then. And he probably had been out, and potentially had a little band of mares at some point. So he remembers those days. He's not steady with people at all, though. It's just in a herd setting. So if you are interested in giving him or any companion horse a home, or just want to look at the list of horses that we have that could be a pasture mate, then head to My Right Horse and type in Heart of Phoenix. If you're on Google, probably the easiest way is just to go to My Right Horse and Heart of Phoenix. It'll get you a landing page, and you can look through the companion horses we have. You can find Tabasco on there. He has been ridden successfully bareback, but again,
there's something about the saddle that's really
the saddle worries him, and so we're just going to go ahead and say companion is where we're at with him right now. Our companion horses adopted $250 up to date on care, and also he would be a foster candidate if you're considering fostering and you have a horse that's kind of maybe metabolic or needs their weight managed, mare or gelding. As long as it's not a mixed herd, really give Tabasco his ad a look and let us know if you're interested. It's one of our favorite times now, Susanna.
It's time for
the Ding-a-ling of the month. This was hard. There were so many ding-a-lings with the Appalachian Trainer Face Off.
It's been rough.
And so we actually, I don't think this was actually the dingiest lingy, but
Wait a minute. Wait, paired with the fact that we're going to talk about the fact that he's ungelded, this sounds very fun.
But this one gave us, I think, more opportunity to, roll into other stories. So Susanna got the phone call.
Yeah, I got a phone call from a fella with a big draw who wanted to know if there was any way that we would adopt out this beautiful horse named Slate while he was still a stallion, because he's so beautiful, and I would really like for him to stay a stallion because I could make use of that.
And what did you tell him, Susanna?
That any reputable rescue won't adopt out a stallion.
And what, was he nice about it?
He kept trying to convince me why he would be fine.
Yeah, he would be fine. So that kind of, the number of people over the years that have made inquiries through Pet Finder, not as much, it doesn't happen much with My Right Horse, because that's very much an equine adoption platform. But with Pet Finder, originally being like a small animal platform, I think that might have made people think it was almost like sales for horses, because people don't think of the people going on there look at cats and dogs, they see horses. I don't know if the average person that doesn't have horses thinks about the need for horse rescue. And through the years, again, it doesn't happen much now, but way back, when I first made a Pet Finder account for the rescue, probably 14 years ago, the number of folks that would right off the bat share that they were looking for a mare to breed, a mare to be a brood mare.
Well, there was that one I did that parody of with Dixie and Riley, and I had the basketball up my shirt.
Because
everybody deserves a chance to be a mama.
So those kinds of inquiries are
less. If we had a stud for sale.
Yeah, a cheap one too.
Cheap one.
Like a cheap one. Flashy, cheap, unregistered for sure.
I don't remember that part.
No, but they don't care about any of those things. So there are rescues that will, in cases where they think they have a valuable registered stallion, they will adopt them out for breeding. And, my position on that is, if their genetics were so valuable that they were worth preserving and protecting, why didn't that keep them safe? So, and also the odds of them ending up in a rescue with these supremely valuable genetics, the genetics alone aren't a way to decide to breed a stallion. You need to have known their siren dam yourself and have seen the evidence of their performance in whatever they've done and the quality, and you need to have really established how predictable offspring are out of that line. And that's I come to with a background with dairy cattle and dairy goats, and they have what they call linear appraisals, and then they have a performance program, and it provides...
Is that how well they walk a line?
What?
A linear appraisal with a performance program. That's how well they walk a line.
That's how well they adhere to the line. But in goats and cows, it produces measurable scientific data, and there isn't something like that, to my knowledge, in America. So we could have listeners that sincerely are not aware of why it would, when you would see this beautiful fellow named Slate, and in the grand scheme, he's just a cute horse. There's nothing knockout about him. He's cute. He's a nice looking fellow. Nothing about him would say, hey, we should breed this horse. But really think about that. If you're listening and you have raised some young horses and you aren't sure that you are finished doing that, it's not enough for something to be attractive. You don't know what genetically is behind them all of the time. You really have to do your homework, and what are genetic issues that horse may be carrying. What has that horse done to perform and prove how it's going to hold up and how its mind is, and do you know the siren dam, grand siren, grand dam, and all that?
Unless you end up with a Chevalsky from the auction,
which literally happened. So
that's crazy.
So that was great you brought that up, because that is one instance. Obviously, don't castrate that stallion.
Don't castrate that one.
And it ended up with a rescue, both the mare and the stallion. If you guys haven't seen this,
they thought they were hennies.
They thought they were hennies. It was wild. They went through a sale somewhere out west. I'm sure I'll forget details or maybe get some facts wrong, but essentially there was a herd of 4 or 5 Chevalskys. They don't know where all of them ended up, at least not when I read about the story, but the stallion ran through a sale. The mare ran through a sale. I believe different rescues bought each of them, and ended up, when they posted pictures, people were like, hey, you have an endangered species that's not just a horse hanging out there. So in those instances, thank goodness, I mean, they ended up with Heart of Phoenix in here, we would have yelled at them. No, we would have known what they were. We would have known. But honestly, it really could have been kind of a genetic devastation, Really? So in that, geld your horses for the most part, unless there's something incredibly exceptional. Obviously, a critically endangered species is exceptional, just because of that. So don't geld those. So we just wrapped up our 8th annual Appalachian Trainer Face Off. Susanna abandoned us
you're still whining.
The third day of it.
It didn't go very well either after I left,
It was rough. We couldn't get a live stream. Nobody heard your commentary. She just ran off lollygagging.
I did not.
It was just a lolly and a gag. No, somebody that she was fond of got married, and I told them they should pick a different wedding date, and that didn't really move anybody. So they kept their wedding date and got married. So Suzanna was not there Saturday. This was the first year we've had 6 judges. And
that was fun, actually.
Yeah, we heard great feedback. We had Noah T.Y. of Steady Horse, Carl Bledsoe of Just Gait, Lee McLean of Keystone Equine, Justin Hafner of Riding Far, Michael Lyons of Michael Lyons Horsemanship, and Brenda Hansen of Hansen's Horse Training. And if you'll recognize some of those names, as 2 of them were previous competitors. It worked out great. What we did was allow the first day.
It saved their rear ends.
It did. It gave them time to kind of talk to people too and not have to sit there as long. What we did was divided the divisions, and one day for one division, you had 3 judges, and then the next division had 3 different judges and alternated. And so the freestyles were judged by all judges collectively. I think that really gave the trainers more feedback and probably more thoughtful feedback. But I haven't been able to even talk to, I don't think, Suzanna about this, and we're going to talk more about it when we have a meeting tomorrow. But the judges had so many ideas. I think when you get 6 people like that together, you get more bouncing off each other ideas. And that time that they had where they could take a break and talk to their other 2 judges, they would just bounce things off. So what we heard a lot of is them wanting to create learning opportunities during the ATFO and from the start of ATFO, from pickup during the 100 days and actually at the event. So how that's going to look, we're not sure yet, but I think that can be very exciting. Kind of taking it a step further, assuring that those trainers are getting one-on-one impact from those judges, not just written down, So how that will look, I'm unsure. But I thought it sounded like a fantastic idea for us to flesh out. If you weren't able to watch it, hop on over to the Appalachian Trainer Face Off on Facebook. Our Whippersnapper Division Champion was Kirsten Heath with Primrose. Our Platinum Division Champion was Brianna Mood with Frazier. Our Diamond Division Champion was Laura Funderburg. It was the first time back in 4 years, I believe. Maybe 4 or 5 years. She won that division with Siobhan. And then I'll talk a little bit about, this happening, but we had a dual champion award for Outlaws. Colby O'Connor trained Laredo, and she got hurt, and Adam Black, his horse was not cleared by the vet due to an abscess, and so he showed Laredo, and I think that really kind of summarized what the ATFO was supposed to stand for. Just, do a great job where a horse can be ridden by someone with a similar skill set, and it shows how much all of that translated, and then also that kind of collaborative intent that, hey, I'm going to help you even though you're my competitor. We're going to do this together. I mean, it really, I thought was...
Well, I can't remember who it was, but somebody who isn't from HOP talked about how much fun it would be if the trainers in each category had one time where they were required to swap horses with somebody, and then that would test the training. Is the horse just tuned for you, or does it translate?
Correct. And so the judges talked about that with me, and we do wonder about
it'd be like
that adding like another little element to the competition.
I think that'd be fun.
So I think we'll talk about that more tomorrow within our leadership and see. The other thing, if this works out, and I'll go ahead and talk about it now, I think you didn't hear about this because you were lollygagging off at that wedding, but Carl Bledsoe and Brenda Hansen.
Oh no, I heard about it.
You heard about it.
Anything I can do, anything you can do, I can do better.
So Carl's potentially taking Hawk from last year's event, who was returned in the winter, and he would have the horse until ATFO next year potentially, and that Brenda would take a stock type horse, and that horse would go through her training program, and they would come and do a judge's demo for everybody to see, maybe even that other judges will score it, And you have the gaited horse with the gaited trainer. Here's what we're doing. And then the stock horse over here with Brenda. And then anything one can do, here I can do it better, go back and forth. And then they said switch horses and see how well the other one does, kind of playing on that.
They did that with a dressage and a cowboy at some big show, and that was pretty neat.
Yeah, so we're thinking about that. And what I kind of see, I think we could talk about the announcement. It's not 100% finalized, but we're in the final stages where we expect to get a grant from the ASPCA Right Horse that I pitched, where two things. We are going to do 3 to 4 locations across the United States this next year, where we will acquire a feral horse and do a 2 to 3 day learning think tank type thing and demonstration, and record those for rescues and other trainers that may want to attend, probably with Nelson Detweiler, so that feral horses are being started well and that people are learning how to do that properly. The other part of the grant was introducing something I've talked a little bit about that we didn't really get off the ground this year, where we don't know exactly how this will look, but where horse owners are really, they're competing to become better riders and have better horsemanship. So exactly how that looks, not sure, but if that kind of piques your interest, then stay tuned, because I think we'll have that fleshed out maybe in a month or so, and it will only get bigger and better after the first year, much like the first ATFO. We'll see what works, what doesn't work this next year, and then hopefully it'll be something we want to keep. But I think I had started to feel like, and I don't know if Suzanna felt this way, but I had started to feel like we had almost ran the course with the ATFO as it was. Like, how can we grow this?
Yeah, it needed to morph.
It needed to morph. And I think the judges, paired with this idea that kind of originated with my husband, who's not a horse person, of how do you harness another part of the audience? And that's the rider. Everybody watching the ATFO isn't wanting to train. Some people are. A lot of them have a horse and they just need to do better with that horse. How is the ATFO helping those people? This is how. But the other part is, are we really doing all we can do to make sure these trainers are leaving better? And 2, are we doing all we can do to encourage trainers to enter? And I think by making this a clinic type of setting, and again, how that looks, we'll see. But if judges, previous judges and current judges and new judges are willing to say, no, this 100 days is about teaching the trainer too, and giving them opportunities to do that, and then knowing they're going to come for that 3 days and have a clinic type session, the value of their participation in getting those judges to do that. Suddenly now, you're not just extending your time to train a horse and get it home, but you're actually taking part in something where judges you couldn't normally get in front of are teaching you. And I think that is that next level. That's what I hope. Susanna's just like, wow, I hadn't heard all that. No, you hadn't. You were gone on Saturday.
You talked to me on the telephone about it.
Oh, well. Anyway,
She's getting old and her memory's slipping.
Yeah, my memory's slipping.
I promise it is.
But I think that is that next thing to push it on. What kind of,
we talked about it at dinner also.
Yeah, a little bit
Friday
there at
night.
dinner. So look forward to that and just kind of telling you guys how that will look. Otherwise, as far as adoptions, we didn't have quite as many horses in this year because we have tried to be real aware of the economy. But there were still, I think, around lower 40s, and around half adopted, which is similar to last year. Around half adopted, just a few less horses in it this year. I think we only actually had 17 horses go through the auction. The average fee was also up. I haven't tallied it, the math, but it was up a little bit on average. But 17 horses went through. 3 did not adopt, I believe. But one of those horses had just come in as a replacement, Beep, with Maribeth Harrell, who would have adopted had she had her the whole time, I feel very sure. Frazier blows my mind. That should have been the horse of the month. A little late now, but Tabasco needed his moment. But guys, Frazier won that with his trainer, Brianna Mood. And Suzanna knows more about him than I do, but he doesn't thrive in a setting. He's not a child's horse. He's a one-person horse.
One competent person that's fair-minded.
And he's maybe 11, 12?
I don't know. Look him up.
It's 11 or 12.
Really
he's a chestnut. He's 15 hands.
He's got an adorable face marking.
He did a beautiful job with his trainer. And so she took him back, and we'll keep working with him, and he's still adoptable. She's not terribly far from Lexington, Kentucky. No. So I just couldn't believe a horse like that went through.
He's 12, and he's 15 hands.
Yeah, nice horse. Very shocked that he did not adopt.
He looks very nice as an English horse.
This was a strange year because Fraser didn't adopt. Primrose has an adoption pending from Whippersnapper. She did not go in the auction. The babies didn't go on the auction. Siobhan was a pretty high adoption fee horse who won the Diamond Division with her trainer, Laura Funderburg. But Laredo, that Adam rode, that had everything going for him.
I was
all
really
the color.
Amazed by that one.
That was wild. He had all the color, the size.
He was a flashy paint. He was stocky. He was big. He was nice.
It was the only horse that had another person get on him and ride him and show.
Yeah.
How, like, out of the water, like Colby had just blown it out of the water training-wise. I tell you, and I'd tell Adam this. I think I did tell him. I think Colby would have beat Adam on Laredo.
She might have.
If that had worked out. Like, I think so. Now, I do. But
it would have been a close race.
It would have. I think it would have been like a nail-biter. But it just... He went back to his trainer who wanted him, so they bid on him. But it was an opening bid of $1,500.
Yeah.
That horse at a regular, like those sales that are high end, that has been, I mean, he'd have went for $25,000. It just blew my mind. So, you just never know. You don't know on that adoption auction. And if you are not familiar with what that is, because I know obviously people may be hearing this and they don't know the background, the adoption auction is approved adopters only that go through our process. It's not a sale. It's a contractual adoption. And approved adopters can bid on horses that they have been approved for. And we try very hard to make sure that process works. And every year we come up with something to make it more smooth. And really overall this year, that portion went really well. The auctioneer that was there this year, he did a really good job. He wasn't as fast as some, and that helps with proxy bids.
I think we should put you in the auction. You're big and you're pretty and you're talented. But I wonder how fast it would take them to bring you back.
Well, if they did flexion, I would fail.
Oh, yeah.
I would not pass my PPE.
Yeah.
And so we did put Nelson in there last year.
That was fun.
Yeah. So anyway, it was overall very good. There's always something that kind of hangs over. So with the adoption auction, sometimes people misunderstand the way that works. And I think a lot of people don't know how much money the ATFO costs to put on. They think, well, look at all this, all these fees.
How much money approximately does it take to put the ATFO on?
Around 50 to 75, 50,000 to 75,000. Now it was around 100,000 in 2021 because we had 75 horses.
Yeah,
so you have to. You just couldn't keep up with it. But the way it's ran the last couple of years, it's around 50 to maybe $60,000. And that says nothing.
The vetting part of that is astronomical.
Astronomical. And the holding the extra horses, the cost for travel for judges, the cost of the main team staying over there, the cost of the facility itself is very high. So it's extremely expensive, and that's fine because...
It'd have been even more if I didn't sleep in a stall.
Yeah, Suzanna sleeps in a stall. I booked myself a Red Roof Inn. So... I don't get too uppity down there for that. But
you're not sleeping in a stall.
No, that's not for me.
Too much like camping.
That's too much like camping. I'm not camping unless it's the apocalypse. And then we won't have to worry about the ATFO. But the cost is so high. The auction itself is the only reason we can do the event. If we did not do that, there would be no way to host it. It would cost more than we could manage.
It's really kind of a balanced thing. By the time we're done with the auction, we just break even pretty much.
Correct. It just really pays for the event. And that's what we want, and it works. And a lot of people don't realize the trainers get 50% of those fees. Now, if that full fee were coming back to us, that wouldn't be fair to the trainer. But yes, it would then be more of a fundraiser but it's not a fundraiser. It covers its costs. So the reason I mention that is we have a horse that tied our biggest adoption fee, Travis, which is $14,000. The last time we had a fee that high was 2021.
Who was
or 2022. Dandelion.
Oh yeah, that
I believe
was
it was 2022.
She was cute.
And she went to a home. It's been wonderful. Travis was $14,000, and the adopter was not present. She had not met him, and some people couldn't understand why we would allow that. And I thought, my goodness, if we did not allow approved adopters that have demonstrated the type of horsemanship and care and consistency that we expect occasionally to adopt a horse that very clearly is an uncomplicated horse where there's a trainer involved, there are many a horse that would never have gotten a home and would still potentially be waiting that are in wonderful placements. But once the horse got up to her the next day, she felt he was too small, and some people were going kind of nutter cakes because they would say, well, why would you adopt a horse to someone that's too big for the horse? The woman is not too big for the horse. She's right there at that margin where, you are at the top end of the size, but she felt like he was too small for her. It's not about the guideline of, hey, 20%. He was smaller when she saw him in person, even though the information's there, than her impression was online. And so what we did was...
Me too.
Yes, and I'm a little more strapping. I'm bigger. I don't think anybody has met me and been like, you're smaller than I thought. But, so there was this back and forth online. We were posting just to give people who had bid on this horse an opportunity to make an offer under, obviously, that maximum bid and see where he could go. The adopter, people were saying, well, why don't you just give all the fee back to the adopter?
That wouldn't have been fair to Caitlin.
And that wouldn't have been fair to the trainer, who did a good job. And it would undermine the integrity of the auction, where why would a trainer believe that we require adopters stand behind their bid? We explain all these ahead of time. Once you bid, it is final.
I heard you say it on the live this time.
Yes, and it's in the paperwork. So people some people were pretty kind of nasty about it, and it was disappointing. And I appreciated some of the trainers coming in. I liked Laura Lazat came in and she said, hey, listen, not only would I not even be involved in this had I not adopted sight unseen. She adopted as a trainer a young horse from us that she calls Felix. We called him Miho. She did not meet him and finalize adoption and picked him sight unseen, but she was a trainer and she screened as somebody who could raise a baby, and they've done a beautiful job. That's what got her involved, who ultimately then led to her coming back to the ATFO 3 years so far, I think. And she said 2 of the 3 horses that have been adopted that she's trained in the ATFO were not met and are still with their adopters. And so she shared that, and others shared stories. So, most adopters are required to meet the horses. I mean, Suzanna's done applications on and off for years, and it's just kind of speak to what makes you feel like, okay, I think this is okay. Like Cambria going out to California.
Yeah, well, I mean, she went over and beyond to send me videos of when she had worked with her other horse when it was a youngster, and she gave me additional references. And, her boarding barn owner said how much she depends on this lady to help her with young horses. She just went way beyond to prove that she was capable of starting a young horse nicely. And
that was a situation where the baby was around a year old. She was a saddle-bred baby, and the lady was in California. And it really made the difference, and they're doing beautifully. Mm-hmm. And it really made the difference in that baby sitting in an orphanage, which is what the rescue is, potentially for years, when somebody who knows saddlebreds was waiting for her in California and willing to do whatever it took to get her there. My own horses, I purchased, they were adoption horses years ago, and not seeing them. I saw them when I picked them up, and they're still there with me today. So, and it can sometimes go wrong, but it can also go wrong when they meet and ride the horse in an environment like the ATFO, which is stressful. And they maybe don't see the horse at their best because the horse is nervous. Or, opposite way, they see the horse with the trainer, think, well, look how perfect they'll be with me. Mm-hmm. And then that's not exactly what happens. And so we really wanted to take this last little bit of this episode to talk about how do you really get a horse that's right for you. And I don't think there's a cookie cutter answer.
There really isn't, because, look how I wound up with Annie. That wasn't a horse that was really right for me.
And you would never have went and picked her out and brought her home as yours.
I had not ever done that, no.
No. And I'll tell you, we've had a few times in the ATFO, horses have a lower rate of return than they do in our traditional adoption. So people can say, well, here's what you'll hear things like, well, 100 days is, that's a timeline, or that auction means they're not ending up, in the right hands. But in fact, the horses come back slightly less often as a result of the Appalachian Trainer Face Off process, which I attribute to screening good trainers and the horses getting so much accomplished.
Also, the trainer's input on whether these people are a good fit or not, because these trainers are so invested in wanting their horses to go the right place that they're watching and they're like, you know what, there's nothing wrong with this rider and there's nothing wrong with this horse, but they don't like each other, and the lady won't admit it.
Well, and I think in the Travis situation, which I want to share because you guys will be hearing this potentially, depending on how quick you listen when this episode goes live, before I post about it, there were a lot of bidders that reached out to me and made offers, and the one that struck me, and unless something changes, this will be the adopter. It was a little girl that rode him, and her mother didn't have the budget to go as high as $14,000. I want to mention Caitlin Reese liked everybody who rode him. He's a very uncomplicated little fellow. She thought everybody did a good job. She didn't come to me and say anybody stood out as this is where he needs to go, and the trainers can do that if they want to.
They can.
But this mother reached out and she sent me a picture when the little girl went up to the barn after they didn't win the bid and told him she was sorry her family didn't win the bid, and she hoped she saw him again someday. And so things kind of work out how I think they're supposed to. And it's not the first time things like that at the ATFO have happened. A couple of times people have bid and they didn't actually pay and do the contract right after and backed out. So there's nothing we can do in those instances if they don't pay. But the horses ended up in a fit that, was so perfect. And often, in one instance, it also involved a child. We called, some of the backup bidders. And at that point, there were two offers on a different horse, Ferrari, because the adopter didn't come up and finalize it. And she was on site. That adopter was there on site and had ridden him. And we asked the trainer, which was Laura Lazotte, who do you like better for that horse? And she didn't even go with the highest fee offer that time. So, I think just being really flexible on that. Horses, you could meet the horse, ride the horse for a month, and then 3 months later decide it's not the horse for you. So we always intend to fit the horse into the best possible home we can, and so we screen and are only approving homes that we think are going to provide a fantastic life for a horse. If you are trying to pick out a horse that fits for you, I think doing away with some of your set in stone ideals like Suzanna had to do, letting go of maybe your last horse that you really liked and that was a great fit at that time. Susanna's horse that she has now is nothing like that other horse. And
not one thing. There's no, except for she's a mare. That's it.
Yeah. Well, and when I went out looking to buy horses, I wanted a certain thing, and nothing that I purchased years ago fit my criteria, and I'm very fond of them both. And
I wanted a big black male, but then I had a big black male, and that wasn't my horse.
I wanted a black Arabian gelding, and I have an old sway back. Well, now she's way back now. She didn't start that way, but I have a gray Arabian mare with an old sway back. Kind of looks like a mule, but I'm very fond of her. But anyway, all right, guys. Well, I don't think we told them where we were podcasting from, but I'll go ahead and share this. Suzanna left on last Saturday to go to this wedding, and
she made me come back.
I made her
missed
come.
Me so much.
Yeah, I made her come back. She drove in today from where she is in Kentucky, back 4 hours or so to the rescue because we needed a podcast before next month. Get our August episode out, and there was just no time during ATFO when we saw each other. And we have a new caretaker, and Suzanna does a great job with not only just showing them ways to do things more efficiently, I think, at the farm, but also I think really translates horsemanship, I think, in a good timely way to them, and gives them ways they can apply. Because these are our new caretaker, and the last two we have, they're not horse people. So Suzanna has a real way of sharing things with them, I think, that stick well, make them feel more confident. And I wanted to make sure that it's not something, I have no teaching ability. I don't enjoy it. I'm no good at it. And that's something you just either have or you don't. So she has that. So she's going to...
I can't fundraise, so there's that.
Everybody has their thing. So she drove in, and we're going to go ahead and do an ATFO meeting to kind of hopefully be able to announce in the next month what differences you'll see in the ATFO. But Suzanna's going to stay through Friday day and help our new caretaker, Mike, get a better hang of handling the horses and how to do the chores, AM, lunch, and PM, in a timely way, and do them well. So that's all we have for you this time. Until next month, I'm Tinia.
I'm Suzanna.
And that's Horses of Courses.